Om Namaste. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let's chant verses number 1, 5 and 10. Sorry, 1, 5 and 20. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik tadrishyam driktu manasam drishyadhi vrittaya sakshi drikeva natu drishyate nodeti nastametyesha navriddhim yati nakshayam swayam vibhatyatha anyani bhasayet sadhanam vina asti bhati priyam rupam nama chetyam shapanchakam adyatrayam brahma rupam jagat rupam tatodvayam. Now I had the verse number 10 in mind when I wrote the title of this talk. I also said verse number 10, it should be 20. So, as I mentioned last time, this is an important verse which is often quoted by the acharyas, the teachers of Vedanta, and it's a very foundational verse and one that we should be very clear about our understanding of it and make it as the basis of how we view our life. So it's an important verse from that standpoint. So it says, Asti bhati priyam rupam namacha iti amsha panchakam Adyatrayam Brahma Rupam Jagat Rupam Tatodvayam. So here it says that if you look at anything in this whole creation, anything, doesn't matter whichever, the whole creation, all experiences, they will have 5 aspects. So here the word amsha, again, I'm just revising it for the time being. The word amsha should not be looked at as parts. It's not as though there are 5 parts to everything. So the word amsha sometimes is literally translated as parts, but that understanding does not do justice to what the vision of this shloka is. So the word aspect is the right one. And so for instance, what it's saying is that the first 3, adyatrayam means the first 3, meaning asti bhati priyam. Asti means one that is, which shines as something which is. And something which is bhati means one which is what is endowed with consciousness, chetana. So asti bhati, and also priyam. So here the consciousness, and the consciousness means what is existing. The existing consciousness, asti bhati, is not something which is kind of like a neutral thing, which is just sitting there not doing anything. No. it is Priyam Rupam. The very content of this first three is that it is made up of joy, of happiness. So it's not as though it is just an ordinary thing which doesn't have joy as its very basis. So for example, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, which hopefully we will do sometime with you, it talks about it looks at the reality in 5 layers. And so, for example, the outer layer, if you may, could be called Annamaya Kosha. And so then internal to that is the Pranamaya Kosha. Next one is called Pranamaya Kosha. Kosha here means a kind of like a covering layer. So, you know, it's interesting in the discussion of the Taittiriya Upanishad, it says that just like you have a kind of like a wooden form, and inside of that you put in some molten metal. It could be a wooden form or could be, I don't know, some kind of an outer form, which is just an outer form. And inside of that you put some molten metal. And then the outer form can be removed and the molten metal becomes the form of the outer form. And then the outer form can be removed. And so now the content of this is the molten metal. Another analogy of this is, which is equally applicable, if you look at a balloon. So the balloon is just a outer form, which is pleasing to the eye. A balloon which is not filled up with air is not very pleasing. It just looks like old and wrinkled. But a full balloon which is stretched to the limit by the air that has been pumped into it is very pleasing. And so, but on the other hand, if you look at the content of a balloon, it is air. Air is the content. The outside is just a form for you to enjoy. But what is holding the form, what is the content of the form, is in fact a pressurized air. It has to be pressurized. That's how the outer form also is built, so that it can take the pressure and expand. It is not just, otherwise the outside air and the inside air is the same. But the pressurized air is the content of the balloon. In that manner, the Pranamaya Kosha is the content of the Annamaya Kosha. The Annamaya Kosha, which is our body, but it is now filled with prana, with pressurized air and some functioning air, and it provides the outer form of the body. And if that prana is taken away, it's like a balloon where the whole body also crumbles. So this is why sometimes you find hikers who find a dead body on the road, and it all depends on how long it's been deteriorating, but eventually there is no outside covering at all. It is simply bones showing. And so because the outside body is not being infused with the air of the prana. So anyway, so going back to the Taittiriya Upanishad, so it has 5 layers. The reason I'm doing this is to point out that priyam, pleasingness or joy, happiness, is the very content of everything. So this Taittiriya Upanishad Panchakosha Viveka is just to show that. And so the outer layer is Annamaya Kosha, made out of food. Inside of that is Pranamaya Kosha. Inside of that is Manomaya Kosha. Thoughts, ideas, conclusions, and so on. The very mind. And in fact, it's interesting that if we analyze our own lives, most of the time we are in the Manomaya Kosha level. Because if you look at Annamaya Kosha is only there when you are wearing clothes, taking clothes off, taking a shower, scratching your surface, then you are aware, scratching your skin, then you are aware of the outer. Then most of the time, many of the time, you are worried about, am I doing well? Am I breathing well? Do I have a cold? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I full? Is my elimination system working well? That is the Pranamaya Kosha. But then that also happens when you are not well or anything. Other than that, the Annamaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha are in the background. The Manomaya Kosha, the mind sheath, is the one you spend most of the time on. This is where you are thinking, what am I doing? What should I do next? And I don't like this, I like that. Trump, elections, COVID, this, that or the other. This is where you spend most of the time. This is called Manomaya Kosha. Then inner to that is Vijnanamaya Kosha. So that's number 4. Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. Vijnanamaya Kosha is what is inside of the Manomaya Kosha and makes it function. What is Vijnanamaya? It means some definiteness about yourself. Here's who I am. I'm a male, I'm a female. My name is this. And also it makes decisions. I think I will do this. Yes, yeah, that makes sense. This is what I'm going to do. And so this definiteness is called Vijnanam. And Vijnanam gives rise to Manomaya Kosha. Once you make a definiteness, like a plan, you'll say, this is my plan. Today I'm going to spend 2 hours doing this. Then you are doing it. When you're doing it, it's Manomaya Kosha. But the start of that is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And in fact, you can extend it to say that the I thought, who I am, and so on. So when you wake up in the morning, it takes a few seconds to realize what's going on, who are you. Sometimes you can, especially, I've noticed it, I don't know how. If you are extremely tired and you happen to take an afternoon nap, which I don't usually do, but if I do, somehow the sleep in the afternoon nap is so deep that when you get up, it takes you a little while to say, what is going on? Where am I? You certainly don't remember the day. You don't remember immediately it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then things come up. But that initial thinking, this is who I am, is called Vijnanamaya Kosha. Now comes the last and the most important kosha, which is called Anandamaya Kosha. Anandamaya Kosha is Priyam. And so Asti Bhati is also Ananda. So we'll spend a lot of time discussing this, but I'll give you the background on this. So that is the core of everyone. The core of all living beings. Whether you are a snail, a bird, or a chipmunk, or a cat, or a human being, the core of all living beings. The non-living beings doesn't matter because they don't have an awareness. But anyone that has an awareness, the very content of the awareness is Ananda. Is joy. So here the question comes in, I don't feel joy all the time. In fact, I wish I could feel joy more often, but I don't. Most of the time I'm non-joyful. So how can you say that it is joy, that my nature is joy? And this is what we'll have to discuss, and we'll spend some time today and develop it more. No, it doesn't violate. It doesn't violate the basic premise that my content is joy. And we will see how. How does it not violate? Okay, so that we will see in a minute, in some time later. But that is the Ananda. Interestingly enough, Swami Maheshananji had made a very interesting observation. And I may have discussed that with you in this class, probably not in some of the other classes. What he said was something very interesting. He said, if you look at a functioning company, a functioning, enterprise, what you find is that there are some basic cultural aspects about the company that are at the core of that enterprise. That was at the core. And when you first joined the enterprise, you were educated on what that core is. So, for instance, I can tell you from my experience, when I joined Hewlett-Packard, one of the important cores of that was honesty. Honesty. Now, I wouldn't say that honesty was not violated many times, especially when there are political issues involved, favoritism and so on. Honesty sometimes is suppressed. So I'm not saying that the honesty was there 100% of the time, but it was there most of the time in our dealings with customers, dealings with each other. That really attracted me. Let's see. I joined HP in 72. I had not started studying Vedanta. I started that soon after my joining HP, but for a year or two I had not yet met Swami Chinmayananji. But even without the Vedanta, and certainly with Vedanta, HP attracted me. He says, this is a company I want to work for. Because I think that it was close to the core of who I thought I was. I am not for cleverness and smartness, but I am for honesty and truthfulness. This is an important core. This is what I have inherited through my parents. And so this company had that. This is my point. I'm going a little bit too much detail. But now, Swami Maheshanji pointed out that if the company has a certain cultural core, then it doesn't need to be reminded every minute, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. Because it is in the very nature of the human, of the enterprise. Swami Maheshanji says, do you know what the core of the entire creation is? Ishvara's creation? A continuous creation. It has never been not created. And it never will cease to be created. It will always go on. It's not something that began at a certain time. The only thing that happens is that you rest in the evening, in the night time. Then you start again. So, just like that, the whole creation is an on and on again creation. The core of this creation, just like HP had honesty as the creation, you know what the core of the whole creation is, as Swami Maheshanji so clearly explained in the Panchadashi? Ananda. Ananda. Joy. So that core is the very substance of the basic Brahman. This is what we're talking about. Brahman means one which is everywhere, which is the very core. That core is Asti Bhati Priyam, which is Ananda. And so let us see how that is the case. It doesn't mean that we have to be reminded that our nature is joyful. This is an important thing to see. So when the child, for example, is born, and the parents now start to protect and support the child's growth, never is it taught that please be joyful. It doesn't need to be, because it is the very core of the whole thing. When somebody is happy, we don't ask, why are you happy? But if somebody is unhappy, then we ask, why are you unhappy? Means that your core is Ananda, isn't it? And Swami Chinmayananda used to say that. He says, it's interesting that in the whole creation of Brahmaji, the original creator, and Vishnu as the preserver, and Shiva as the destroyer of things, not really a destroyer, although Rudra as one of the forms of Shiva is responsible for destroying. To anything which is bad, it is responsible for annihilating it. But really Shiva is one which is responsible for making things be gone. Like when we forget things, it is really Shiva's job to make sure that we forget bad things. We just go on. Anyway, I won't go into the detail. But here's the thing. Vishnu, Swami Chinmayananda used to say, the classical picture of Vishnu is that he is lying on this giant serpent and just comfortably lying with his eyes closed or half open. You know what the symbology of this is? The symbology of it is that having created the entire cosmos with Ananda as its core, He doesn't have to work to remind everybody that this is Ananda. Please don't forget it is Ananda. Please don't forget it. Work for it. We don't have to be reminded. It is our core. But you know what? We do forget it. In fact, we don't know it. All of our actions, no matter what our actions, eating, drinking, talking, acting, working with people, whatever, the basis remains is my Ananda. How am I doing? The sleeping as the epitome of Ananda, where I don't want to do anything. I just want to do anything. Why? Ananda. So this is where the Priyam belongs in the core of the creation. So the first three is the core. Core in the sense means one which is unchanging. One which is the very content of, so even in the Taittiriya Upanishad, the Panchakosha, you may have Anandamaya Kosha, you may not have this, but the you may not have Annamaya Kosha, you may not have other things and so on. They are all fleeting and coming and going. Ananda is the very core of the human being, all living beings. And so therefore, this verse says that if you look at the entire creation, then three aspects are at the core of our being. And those are presence and existence, asti, presence of the consciousness, bhati, and the presence of Ananda. And what varies, so this is called Jagat Rupam, Adyatrayam Brahma Rupam. Brahman is the very core of the whole creation. The Jagat Rupan means the field of experiences, if you may, is the last two, which is Nama Rupa. And the Nama Rupa means the name and the form are not really separate from the core. They are just an aspect of the core. Like, for instance, in the ocean, water is the core, right? Water is the core. And what you find is that the form of the ocean can be many. You have small wavelets. You can have huge tsunamis. You can have surf, beautiful surf. You can have foam. You can have a lot of disturbance or no disturbance, very little disturbance. Where sometimes the ocean looks like a lake. All that is changing. But wavelets, tsunami, foam, surf, whatever you can talk is nothing but water alone. And each one of them, foam, tsunami, etc., have a name and a form. So this is how whole creation is. We should view that in that manner. So one last revision on this word Priyam again. So a couple of interesting aspects of it, which I already covered last week, which is that Priyam you can say, I don't agree with everything being Priyam, because there are things that are not pleasing to me. Like a dead rat. Dead rat is not pleasing to me. And it's interesting in the creation, the things that are not pleasing to a human being have a bad smell. And things that are pleasing to a given being have a good smell. A dead rat has a bad smell and it is not pleasing to me. So you cannot say that pleasingness is the core of everything. I agree with asti and bhati. So even a dead rat, asti means it is there. That it is bhati, I can see as a conscious, it's an object of my consciousness. But priyam is not there. So how can you say priyam? So it is pointed out, wait a second, that is not true. Because the priyatvam is not the quality of things, it is the quality of where you are in the creation at that time, which is changing, which changes. Like for example, the dead rat is very pleasing to people that feast on its body. Now, you and I will not feast on the body of a dead rat. We won't even feast it on any rat. But if the rat, as is our experience, supposing you throw out a rat out in the open, first of all, you find birds that are flying around that will just take it away. If the birds don't get it, what will happen is that ants will be all over it. Something or the other will be very pleasing. This is what happens, that on the road, if you are driving and you find there is some squirrel that got smashed, the poor thing, it just looks awful. There are crows that are waiting for the cars not to come before they will peck on it. Very common scene. In fact, as soon as the car approaches, the crow look at it and says, "Oh my gosh, another interruption. Why can't I have a good meal?" So a dead squirrel is pleasing to the crow. So what it means is that a substance, any object, is pleasing to someone or the other. It may not be pleasing to you, and that's because of some issues with you, not with the object. And so this part is an important one to see. What it means is, I want to have the core of myself be my everyday experience. And so, so just look at this. This is, these are these three cores. Three aspects of the core, not three cores, but three aspects of the core. Asti bhati priyam is what I want. And these are the three that I don't have. Or at least Vedanta says you have it, but you don't appreciate it. This is the issue. Praptasya prapti. So let's look at it how. So, asti. Asti means that I want to be. And my view is, at one time I was not there, and at one time I will not be there. The death of any living being is certain, not possible to not be dead. So now that governs my life. How long do I have to live? For those of us that are getting very old, this is at the very core of our life. How much time do I have? What do I have to do? I hope I don't get stuck by COVID-19. I hope I'm not that old. Nowadays, all the news item is that President Trump is 74, so he's vulnerable. That's what everybody is talking about. And so for an old person like us, like me, certainly the mortality is very much present in the thinking. For a young person, you don't think about mortality or anything. What the heck are you talking about? But as you grow older, that takes up more of your thinking space. So I want to be. If you tell me that the beingness is at the core of everything, I don't get it. Because I was not there at one time and I know I won't be there. Okay, so are you happy with it? No, I'm not happy with it. Because I want to be. This is where, as I say many times, the acharyas point out that we want to be in as many pictures as possible. This is a very natural human thing. When there's pictures being taken, you are talking to somebody and say, wait a second, there's a picture being taken, I want to be there. You want to be in as many pictures as possible. This is the stupidest idea I ever think about, because you feel that if I am not there, at least my picture will be there. This is just a reflection on the quest for immortality. And then the second one is bhati. So bhati means that not only should I be there, but I should be aware of it. Like supposing we say, okay, all right, we'll grant you long life, but guess what? The last 20 years you'll be in a coma. You're not aware of who you are. Would you like that? Will you sign for it right here? You'll say no. I don't want to be in coma. I'd rather be dead than to be in a coma. I'll be a burden on others. So I want asti and bhati. And the possibility of bhati not being there is always there. It's very possible that I may not be. You feel that I am. See, this is the thing. You feel I am conditionally conscious. This is what our thinking is. The faulty thinking is that I am conditionally conscious in the fact that if my brain is working okay, I am conscious. If the brain doesn't work, then I am become unconscious. You know, like for example, when you are given anesthesia, when you're given anesthesia, you feel that your consciousness is lost. It's not lost. What is lost is your awareness of who you are. There is a thought that this is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Exactly. That's the Vijnanamaya Kosha. I am this. That may be lost. Not lost. That may be suppressed. But the fact that you are conscious is not lost. It's never suppressed. This is why when you wake up from deep sleep, your awareness of who you are is suppressed, but you are just saying, I slept well. You can even after say your anesthesia, that I was not aware of anything, but I am the same person, awareness. So the awareness is never affected. But the bhati can have a sleeping pattern to it, if you may want to look at it that way. So I want to always be aware. Want to be aware. I remember this friend of mine, this is, I don't know, about 30, 40 years ago. One of the very original Indians that we were here for in the 60s or so, who invented some technology and made a ton of money. I mean, nowadays every other Indian has lots of money, especially the ones that are software engineers and they participate in these IPOs. Instant millionaires. And you cannot even count them in the Bay Area. They're all over the place. But in those days, it was very rare to find such a wealthy Indian in California. There were some, but very, very unusual. And he's a good friend of mine. He always has been and continues to be. And I remember his words one time so well. And this is after I had been introduced to Vedanta. And he was once telling me, he says, you know, Vijayji, I don't want to go to sleep. I said, no, why not? He says, I'm having so much fun in my life. Obviously he was having fun because he made so much money and he got his whole family together. Good guy, what a wonderful person. And success, adulation. All the presidents of the US used to shake hands with him. He used to give money to everybody, all from the very beginning, 60s. And so on. So he was a big guy. And he says, to sleep to me is an interruption. I don't want it. Yes, you know, that's what he was thinking. But the fact of the matter is that he also could sleep. Why? Because sleep is better than all experiences. If he was not, it's just a way of saying, I don't want to sleep, because otherwise he would put chilies in his eyes. Swami Dayanand used to say that if you think you are going to disappear while you are asleep, you will put chilies in your eyes. No way. You'll keep on drinking 2 cups of coffee every hour. That's what happened to me, unfortunately, when I was a student at Berkeley doing my master's in computer science. And in those days, programming was done through the computer center at Berkeley. And I had a deadline, and I was really behind. I was designing some software as part of my coursework, and actually a thesis, a master's thesis. And I had no time. So I would try to stay up as long as possible and not even sleep at all. So I would drink a lot of coffee to keep me awake. So I cannot, because I had to program. I had a deadline to meet. Ultimately, I developed a stomach ulcer because I was drinking so much coffee without eating anything. It drilled a hole in my intestines. I remember that so well in 1964, 65. Anyway, we enjoy sleep because it is Ananda. So 2 of the 3 now we have covered. I want to live forever. And the interesting thing is, we are birthless and deathless, but we don't believe it. And because of that, we cannot get rid of our desire to be birthless and and deathless. Birthlessness means deathlessness. And so we want to be asti bhati. And of course, going back to the narrative, do you want to live forever? Yes, absolutely. And is it okay if I put you in coma from time to time? No. I want to be asti and bhati. And also, can you live forever when you're unhappy? I want to live forever. I want to be aware of it. And I want Ananda all the time. In all three cases, my estimation of what my reality is faulty. Even though I am asti bhati priyam, I am confused about it. I think I was born and therefore I am going to die. I think I may have problems in awareness, and I am continuously fighting happiness and unhappiness. But this is not true. This is what I have to do. And so, on the book by Swami Viditatmananda, especially on page 154, I was just reviewing his notes a couple of days ago. He has made it very good case for why things are not priyam for me. Why things are not, because if it's very obvious that there are things that I don't need to be pleased about. A dead rat, I don't have to be pleased about a dead rat. Let the crows eat it, it's okay. But there are things that are not necessarily displeasing, but they are displeasing to me. And this is where our changes in our life has to take place. And in fact, it's what I would call a self-inflicted wound, where I'm limiting myself onto the pleasingness of things to me.
Call from Los Altos, CA.
This is sorry, I took the phone out. Forgot to take the phone out. So what I need to do is to understand that even though joy is my own reason, own core, I don't enjoy it because of the blockages that I have put onto myself. This is what is called in Sanskrit language pratibandha. Pratibandha means there is a obstruction. This is an important word to understand, an important concept to understand. So what it means is that either I am not, my core is not joy, and I have to create somehow or the other. This is exactly what our experiences are. From our experiences, we create joy for ourselves, thinking that joy is not our process, is not part of our core. But slowly we have to understand that I am hurting myself in not recognizing that the Ananda is my own core, and I'm putting some obstructions in the path. This we said, no, how can that be? How can I be hurting myself? I cannot do that. No. Yep. This is exactly what is happening. I think the analogy to this, which is which made a lot of sense to me when it was first presented to me, was this. Supposing you are inside a room and you have all the drapes drawn, all the windows closed. Sometimes people that want to sleep in will do this. They will completely get these thick curtains, and the sun is there until sun is up until about 10 o'clock, but they want to sleep through until 10 o'clock. They don't want to wake up. And so they make the room completely dark. And so that is really the situation that we are finding. My core is lightedness. There is sunlight everywhere. But I have kept the doors and windows and curtains of my mind so enclosed that I'm saying it is so dark in here, there's no light. Hey, can you please let the light in? No, I have to create a light. This is not, you don't have to create a light, please. Light is so subtle, you are incapable of creating it. Ananda is so, just imagine the very nature of joy. Did you create joy? All you can do is to reveal joy. You didn't create it. So similarly, the light is not created. What you need to do is to just try it. Just try it. Just open your curtains a little bit. And then once you're convinced that, oh my God, yes, the light is there. Now, the more you open, you find that the light is the very core of it. And so exactly the same way. And how do we block it? Because as Swami Viditatmananda points out so beautifully in his book, that really we are surrounded by our own intense likes and dislikes. And there's a lot to discuss here, and we will do that some other time. But this is how we refuse to see that Ananda is my own core. And it's confusing at first. But the more you think about it, is that I am obstructing it by myself. So just to complete the thought that I had about the nature of the word pratibandha or obstruction, this is an important concept to grasp. So what happens is, another analogy, if you are having some problems in seeing through your eyes as well as you used to, and you go to a doctor and the ophthalmologist looks at it, your eyes do this, do that, all that, and said, okay. So you say, yeah. Now there is a fear. There's a couple of things. One is that your eyes are now losing it. They are deteriorating. This is the bad news. This is the bad news. It's almost like premature blindness. It's very possible. Very possible that the doctor will say, I'm sorry, I have some very bad news. You have this kind of a disease, and you are going, I'm very sorry to tell you, we don't have a cure for this. You in 4 or 5 years will be totally blind. This is one kind of doctor's conclusion. Or the doctors will have a smile on their face and say, this is cataract. What is that? We don't know what cataract. Cataract is some kind of a film, and it can be easily removed, and then you'll be back again 20/20. So that is the nature of pratibandha, obstruction. The word obstruction is a very important one. So the lack of ananda as our own core is the nature of an obstruction. It is not the nature of a disease. This should be a very pleasant news. But the removal of obstruction, the removal of cataract also requires some work. Just by saying it, it's not going to go away. So similarly here also it says in the Bhagavad Gita and all of these instructions of all of the books of Vedanta, that we really have to work on slowly removing our likes and dislikes. And the more you do that, not for anyone else, this is not meant for why don't you like me? This is for your own self. You're obstructing your own joy by yourself, by having strong views about things. I don't like that person. I don't like this situation. The more we soften it, the more we discover that the very core of our being is Priyam. That the lack of ananda is my self-inflicted obstruction. And it may not go away, but at least the doctor's advice should be understood. It is not a natural deterioration of your ananda. It is an obstruction of an ananda which he says your eyes are perfect. That you don't need to do anything except just go through this process of removing the cataract. So that is the so to recognize this, so this is the opinion of a, and sometimes you can you have problems. This is often that what people do. You can go to a doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, this is just cataract. I think it'll be okay." You are still not convinced of it, so you take a second opinion. You don't need to for something like this, but you know what? This is how we are. We don't trust any one person. So you take a second opinion and they say, yeah, it's a cataract. Didn't you get that already? He says, yes, but I wanted a second opinion. He says, yeah, thank you for your money, but it's a cataract. So this is a great discovery. You should be joyful that can be done so quickly. Nothing wrong with your eyes. So similarly, this verse should be taken as the doctor's conclusion about us. Your joy is inherent to you, and it is being obstructed by some things, and please work on removing the obstruction. You'll be okay. This is an important verse in that step. It means that Asti Bhati Priyam is Brahma Rupam, and you are the Brahman. Brahman means everything is Brahman. That is the very core of the Panchakoshas, the Anandamaya Kosha, and then Ananda itself is you. But work on removing your wrong opinion about it. And eventually what it means is, don't worry about others. Worry about yourself. When you're doing likes, intense likes and dislikes, you're hurting yourself. You may be hurting others. Very possible you may be hurting others, but more than anything else, you're hurting yourself. Why do you want to do that? Well, I want to do it because this is not right. This is not right. Why should he say that to me? There was a incident that Swami Maheshanji was pointing out. I forget the name of the Swami. So there was an acharya who had been running an ashram. And there were a lot of people in the ashram. Some people were on the staff, brahmacharis who were studying. Others were helping, and then other people will come, like it happens in any big ashram. And there were lot of issues that come up, some fights, some quarrels, and the manager of the ashram was trying to get everybody to cease, having fights, and he was being unsuccessful. So one day he went to the Swami and he said, "Swamiji, we really need need you to intervene." So this Swami was just a teacher, and as a teacher he was a Mahatma. He was just thinking about all the things about himself and how what he is, and he's teaching the truth about it to the students and so on. And happy person and very well satisfied. Nothing was bothering him. So this manager came to him and he said, "Sir, we need you to intervene because this ashram is really not behaving itself, and we need you to really get mad at people and really tell them what needs to be done, because this is not functioning very well and I don't know what to do. We need you to do that." So Swami Maheshananji says, this Swami tells him, he says, "Wait a second. I don't want to be unhappy by scolding people. Why should I be unhappy? I don't want to scold anyone, because real scolding means that I'm also unhappy. I raise my level of anger. That's what scolding means." And he says, "I don't want to do that. I'm happy. Let people misbehave if they want to. I'm happy to give them a light, sweet talk, and then you please deal with it the best you can. It doesn't matter to me what people do or don't do. If the ashram just falls apart, let it fall apart. What does it make any difference to me?" He says, "I don't want to make myself unhappy because that's not my core." So this is exactly what the situation is. Our view of dealing with the whole life should be in such a manner: am I unnecessarily hurting myself? Am I making my cataract even worse? Why am I doing it? If I was not doing it before, that might have been a good reason, because I didn't know what my core was. But now that I know it, should I not expeditiously make that as my nature and be aware of it and live it? Of course I should. So anyway, this is the last part of the verse number, not last part, but the last one on verse number 20. And 21 is just a very small, I should have really done 21 also. In fact, you know what? Let me just quickly do, if you could give me a couple of minutes, we'll do number 21 right now, because it doesn't really add anything more to it. It is simply an examination of verse number 20. And so from then on, number 22, we will start a new topic, a new concept. So let's do number 21. So I'll pronounce it twice. Khavayu-nirjalor-vishu devatiryang naradishu abhinnaha satchidanandaha bhidyate rupanamani. One more time. Khavayu-nirjalor-vishu devatiryang naradishu abhinnaha satchidanandaha bhidyate rupanamani. So here the word Satchidanandaha is the same as Asti Bhati Priyam. Just different words, but the content remains the same. So this is what is called, or the same thing as Satyam Ganam Anantam. Satchidanandaha Asti Bhati Priyam. Ahamasmi aham bhami sakadachit naham apriyaha. Same thing. Same thing. So, abhinnaha. Bhinnaha means that remains the same. Remains the same in what? In Kha, Vayu, Agni, Jala, Urvishu. So these are the Pancha Mahabhutas. Kha means the Akasha, Vayu means the air, Agni means the fire, Jala means water, and Urvi means the earth. So the entire creation, everything is made up out of one of these two. And so this is the very core of the creation. And then from this, these are called Pancha Mahabhutas. Bhutas means the elements. Then you have Bhautikas. Bhautikas means what is derived from that, what is made up of that. And what are those? These three basic ones: Deva, Tiryak, and Nara. So Deva is the celestials, the ones who dwell in heavens, and Tiryak means the horizontal ones. That's the definition of animals. Animals, by generally speaking, are horizontal. They're not standing up like this. Very few animals stand up like this. And Nara. Nara means you and I, the human beings. So he says, doesn't matter whether it is in the bhutas or bhautikas, abhinnaha satchidanandaha. Then vidyate rupa namani. Only in the rupa and nama, name and form, they are different. So exactly what we went through earlier about the ocean, being either a small wavelet or big one or whatever, tsunami. Those are just names, but they're all water. So number 21 simply gives the example of the 20. So thank you for that extra time. So with that, I think we will close off that topic and start a new one next week. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Let's see if any questions. So Anshri Greenbaum says that if I focus on my Ananda without concern for the consequences to others, is this not a risk contributing to possible harm to others and participating in the anthropocentric tendencies of the culture? And then she goes on towards the letter one, or is my attention to recognizing my true nature of Ananda the greatest contribution I can offer to this human experience? Yeah, good thoughts, good questions. So we don't say that it is one at the expense of the other. It's not what the intention is. It's not as though, so that is selfishness, would be called selfishness. That I'm only concerned about myself, not about others. So we don't say that. So harmony in living is the very consequence of our teaching. So harmony in living means that you need to do whatever is necessary. You don't shirk from that at all. It's not necessary to do that. You are working in harmony with others. What you're working against is your own reactions against the others. This was briefly discussed in our first class this morning, where what we had concluded in this rather advanced text called the Mandukya Karika, that your experiences of life don't need to be changed. Nothing needs to be changed. Everything should be going on as it has already been going on. Well, you can make some small adjustments, It doesn't mean that you don't think and look at any changes in your environment and the people you befriend and so on. That's all of that. We're not talking about that. But in general, you see, this is different from our tendency that I want to change my experiences. I want to have a different kind of an experience. And so on. This is what our nature is. Why? Because we are not happy with where we are. So Vedanta says, not very smart. You just go with where you are now, and you don't need to change your experience in order to be happy. Then what? What should I do? You change your conclusions about the experiences. So it's not as though you are hurting anybody in fact, it's just the opposite. You may be hurting others by being careless in your talk, certainly careless about your thoughts and attitudes and so on. Let go of that. Really, others are incapable of hurting you. You are hurting yourself by taking a faulty view of yourself. So this is not an either-or situation. In fact, we concluded, I wish we had more time, but we concluded in the first class that the best way to behave in your life is to understand it is a play. And the implications of this are enormous because if you are acting in a play and some of the roles that you have are not very pleasant to you, then there's one of two things you can do. You can refuse to act in the play because the roles that you have are not good. And by doing that, you really spoil the very play itself. because everything was agreed, this is what the role you're supposed to do, and all of a sudden you say, I don't want to play this role anymore. Well, the whole thing collapses. Or you can say, this is just a role. The understanding that this is just a role only comes in, that understanding of this being a role only becomes real to you if you understand who you are outside the play. This is important. You cannot say this is a play if this is the only thing that you know. But if you know for sure, so this is what the whole teaching is all about. Asti bhati priyam nama rupam chaiti. Your core is something different. You're playing a beggar's role, and I understand you don't like it because the way you look and how you have to beg and so on. But the fact of the matter is you've got $5 million in the bank. You're a famous actor. How can you forget that? Don't forget it. In fact, the reason you are so rich is because you play so well. So that is really, so it's not an either or. It is really hurting yourself and hurting others by having a wrong view of who we are and so on. So that's what. And your second one is, my attention to recognizing my nature of Ananda is the greatest contribution I can offer to this human experience. You can offer it, so I would just ask a question. Are you talking about others' experience or your own? You should be talking about your own. Yes, that is the greatest contribution you can offer to your own experience. And to a degree, if you can share it to the others who are willing to learn, then it's a contribution for others as well. But don't go on proselytizing because people are not ready and so on. Don't know conversion as necessary, no nothing. If people don't want to learn, they don't want to learn. You do it and you set an example, then people will ask, how come you're so happy all the time? What's your secret? And then you can say, come to my classes or something like that. So anyway, that's the way I would express those things. I don't think I'm missing any questions. I don't think so. Anyway, good. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week. Om.